Hi, this is Eva Adams. I'm an American in Berlin, Germany, and I'm a member of the Blue Dot family, and they encourage us to speak out. And so I've done so last year and a couple of times afterwards, but I haven't been able to manage, mostly because I've got my health problems, but I still want to get out what's on my mind. And since they all have the current news covered, I try to delve into my special subject, which is my number one issue, disinformation. Um, I was glad to hear an expert uh, from one of the institutes, I think he was associated with Harvard or whatever, a doctor, talking about the pandemic and how disinformation has become more dangerous than the pandemic itself, because disinformation is what has created the flare up of the pandemic. You know, if you're uh, told all the time that you don't need to wear a mask, the mask is going to kill you, and it's only for uh, idiots, and the whole thing is a hoax. That's what's driving the surge, even though we're not even in a second wave, but that's what's driving it. And um, these disinformationists or disinformers know what they're doing. They the phenomenon internationally did basically get going the most in Russia, but it's over 2 decades ago that they had their strategy running through the KGB, FSB. And so they've had a long time to pump up their network, make it very international, and make it so confusing that because they've melded together with the strategy of all kinds of Republicans, who knows, that are connected to them. So you can't even tell who's who anymore, from the troll farms in Nigeria and Macedonia that are run by Russian oligarchs, to uh, the disinformationist in the United States, which can be everything from QAnon and OAN to a dozen of other networks and thousands of other groups. Unfortunately, the strategy is to hit extremists on the left and the right, anybody who's vulnerable to disinformation. So what I get the most concerned about is no longer the far right, who are goners and like a cult, but those on the left, which they already tapped into a small percentage of the Bernie revolution, um, back starting in 2015. I mean, I watched it go by me, and they're still there, and they're still pushing it. Which is why you have a faction in the left who are still going to be, like, talking against Biden for whatever various reasons. However, the good news is they're starting to listen to Bernie, which they didn't do in 2016. And there is already a shift. And so what I wanted to talk about today is how we can continue to develop that shift in a more positive direction against the disinformers. My situation in terms of when somebody uh, falls for disinformation in my circles is I am grieving. So I wanted to title this, I Grieve for the Disinformed. We have had a tendency to just really shut down and start hating um, the idiots who are believing all the lies. And that hatred, that resentment is exactly what they want. The whole purpose of the lies is to divide the country and to divide society. They want us, those on the left, those who are more reasonable, to be outraged, terrified, frustrated, exhausted, and in despair, disgust, to the point we get literally sick. And it's happened to me over and over again. And that is something I'm fighting. And I want to have more people joining me in the healing against this aspect of the disinformation campaign that starts tearing us apart and making it so difficult with our own family and friends. Um, or just acquaintances, neighbors. The disinformed are there because they are in bubbles, but there's a lot of respect and happiness that they feel in their bubbles. They're in their churches. You know, all of this hatred for Hillary and Obama and everything like that is going on inside of a church or the NRA or uh, like the Bernie Revolution, the progressives, they're fighting for great causes. So, you know, so what if something slips in because, you know, some of our Democrats are too close to uh, corporations or war? Oh my God, you know, I mean, that was a big part of how Hillary lost was the whole Greens and Bernie or Busters decided that Hillary was a warmonger. And I know that is coming with Biden. I don't want to get into it because I don't want to push it, but I mean, he's not a warmonger. I can tell you that. Um, Neither was Obama. So, but I know that will be their narrative that they'll push through our circles. Uh, and we have to be prepared and we have to be forgiving because we've got to work towards healing this country. We've got to work towards not only is it about healing um, in the United States. I'm in Germany. We feel it over here. We've got to heal the world because we're dealing with major crises with the pandemic and the economy. And you know, this disinformation network is unsustainable. We've got to find ways to get people to understand it and fight it. So one of the main things to do is to recognize what they want, that they want us to be really, really so angry that we get violent, and to remember John Lewis and Martin Luther King, like we're doing this week, and say no. And it's a situation where we need to always remember um, uh, people like, or groups like the ACLU, um, there's every single time we see, such an outbreak like what's going on in Portland and everything else, that they're basically everything that they're doing there that's all for the campaign. I mean, it's an election campaign photo op, so the idiot in the White House shows that he's the big law and order guy. They're already using it. They put 40 million into one of the ads, saying, oh, they're defunding the police. I had arguments with my friends because I said, I understand the perfectly well-intentioned goals of the defund the police movement. That's absolutely understandable, perfect, what they want to do. But the slogan, defund the police, will be used against us. And it has been. And it works for a lot of people. Doesn't, and it's the same thing. Who was it? It was Jim Clyburn was the one that was speaking out against defund police as a slogan. He said, when back in our days, when we were having our big debates within the Black community, they wanted to. There was a fragment of the, or not a fragment, a faction of the Black movement that really was pushing burn, baby, burn, and uh, it doesn't work. This whole week, where we're going to be devoted and committed to honoring the name of John Lewis, is also going to be about all of them in the civil rights movement that fought for us, and they are to be remembered. That whole spirit uh, needs to be raised this week and throughout the next 100 days. Absolutely, because they depend on their conspiracy theories and uh, lying and blaming and demonizing us. And we need to make our narrative more positive, because when we fall for being so outraged that we're just doing nothing at all except fighting in a bitter way, then it's a situation where they get to play the victim, and that's what the disinformation is about, is to get us so angry and critical that they become the victim. I'm so proud of so many of our Democrats, including Joe Biden, by the way, who don't fall for that. But we have a natural reaction, and our rage, our anger. I mean, I love John Brinabo like everybody else. I do, and all the other ones who are raging or ranting every day. I mean, love, but he also doesn't just rage. He also is constantly bringing up a lot of other positive things too, and that is precisely what I want to point out and push. That's why I'm talking today. Is um, we need to get out of this absolutism and the black and white, and recognize there's a lot more complexity of the whole situation, because the people we need to win the elections are the ones that usually don't vote, the independents, the educated, especially the women. And you don't have to even talk to the cults, the ones that are gone into fanaticism. We need to just hit the ones that don't involve themselves very much with politics, um, because they don't like all this stuff, you know, um, and just recognize it's only a sliver of America in this 5-10% range that is going to really make the difference. And we need to strategically go for a more positive narrative to bring them in and want to vote. Not, I mean, the protest vote is okay too, whatever it takes. I don't care, just as long as we get them out there and get them to recognize that they make a difference. You know, our vote matters, our future matters, the future of our children and our grandchildren matters. And um, you know, I joined the Blue Dot movement because blue dots in red districts, red city, red areas, red states are the most important voters, and swing states. Um, you're the most important voters, not only in the United States, but in the world, because the future of the world is in your hands. Uh, and we need the activism of blue dots more than anybody. Well, not anybody, obviously, but when you think about how many blacks are blue dots too, um, that are living in the South, states like Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi. Um, that's a whole. We need to recognize they are blue dots as well, and they're going to make a difference in Georgia, I tell you. And they might make the difference in Alabama so that we don't lose Doug Jones after all. Um, you know, we really have a lot of our blue dot family is big. Um, so here we go. Yes, I want to talk about a community that I've been in, um, which is I would call it more like the alternative community or the new age, and the ones that are um, more open faith believers. Um, I grew up as a Christian, going to church every Sunday, and then was in those hippie days in the 70s. I kind of like opened up a whole different worldview of accepting all the different faiths and cultures and diversity, and that's my background. So that came from California, where um, the whole alternative movement is still thriving. I'm really happy about that. And yet there's something new called conspirituality. There's a conspirituality movement. When I saw an article about that, I just went, "Oh my God!" And they kind of got their way into that uh, area through the anti-vaxxers. And I'm finding sometimes this disinformation network that has uh, hit the anti-vaxxers and the spirituality movement or the new age movement, or these are people I love. Um, you know, they're also, you know, anti-war and anti-corporation, and but they're pushing disinformation about uh, the virus, that about COVID-19, that it's a hoax. They're anti-maskers in there, and it's coming from some of their, you know, their healers and their the ones that are giving these workshops and all that kind of stuff. And apparently, the article that I was reading, there are fights in their community uh, between those who have determined that the entire pandemic is a hoax and others that are more reasonable, open, science based. And when I talk about I grieve for the disinformed, I mean, there are people I love who have actually fallen down that rabbit hole, and that hurt me probably more than anything in the last weeks. So I don't know how to talk to them. I mean, once somebody is, no, I just don't know what to say anymore. But I think if there's anything I want to say is that I care, and just talk in generalities about where my passion is, which is to research and look at the reality of the disinformation network, how it works, what they want of us, and then do the opposite of what they want. It's just like, I don't know. God, when you lose people you're close to, or you feel like you could be losing them, um, it's the hardest. It really is, and that's probably the number one reason I wanted to speak out on this whole thing. Okay, I made a lot of notes last week and couldn't get to this, but let me see what I've got here. We need to resist with the truth and the support of Democrats. Now, what I see constantly throughout Facebook and other networks is anti-Trump, anti-Trump, anti-Trump all the time. I also see you know, all the various senators we can't stand, and we know who they are. I don't have to name their names because we repeat them every day. What I am trying to promote is for us to start spreading the names of their opponents who are fighting for us and for our cause. Like yesterday, I have to pull this up. Uh, I started posting in reaction to I'm losing my train of thought here as I'm pulling something up. Um, the Lincoln Project put out an ad naming all kinds of just disgusting senators we know we can't stand, all the enablers for the con man we know we can't stand. And so I wrote, oh, they said, know these names, yeah. No, no, no. Those aren't the names we need to know. We already know them. Amy McGrath, John Hickenlooper, Sarah Gideon, Mark Kelly, Jamie Harrison, Cal Cunningham, Teresa Greenfield, M.J. Hager, Steve Bullock, Dr. Al Gross, Barbara Bollier. Those are the names to remember. Those are the names to support. Are any of these names that you don't recognize at all? Well, I'm sure. Well, you need to, because they are fighting for our lives. We need to support them. So basically, what I would like to see, I don't expect it because we're acting, completely naturally all the time. And it's okay. But what I would love to see is if we would start posting twice as much about the good of the Democrats or what they're saying or who we support or for their campaigns as we do about all the disgusting news and garbage that the Republicans are doing every day. Now, I'm not saying, I wrote it as a proposal once, a 2-for-1 campaign. Obviously, when you're sitting there on Facebook or wherever you do it, any of your networking, you're not going to sit there and think mathematically, okay, it's not how much did I post on this or that. You see what you see and then you just, okay, I'll share this. But what I'm trying to get at is we need more effort in our communities, in our Blue Dot family, to pull up the more positive information of what the Democrats are doing and what they're saying and spread that. Because, for instance, if you join a politician's site, some Democrat, my congressman or the senators, what you'll find is when you look at their thread, they are invaded like crazy. The Facebook side, I think it's Democratic Senate. I've been on it for years and I can't remember what it's called. Democratic Senators something. Anyway, their main page, every single time Chuck Schumer comes out, you get hate messages like up the yin yang. It's just, and they can over flood it to the point. What do? They drive away normal Democratic posters and supporters, and that's the strategy. So it's like, wait a minute, we need to shift that. We need to turn it around. We need to get more people who are supporting and showing enthusiasm. I know it's obvious we're going to have a lot of friends who are the ones that are holding their nose. I'll vote for him, but you can't stop their feelings. There's nothing wrong with their feelings. However, I hope they recognize that the more that they spread of their resentment towards Biden or Democrats or da 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 da, then the harder it is to get out the vote to stop the worst president in the history of the United States, the most dangerous, the biggest liar, and the biggest disinformer we've ever experienced. I mean, he's there was a great special report from Fareed Zakaria on CNN about Donald Trump's conspiracy theories, or where he delved into how the President of the United States is pushing OAN, which is basically connected to the Kremlin. because maybe it's not a direct connection. Maybe somebody's married to somebody, or they just went to these Ukrainians who just happen to have been supporters of their politicians who were connected to the Kremlin, and therefore they're willing to push evidence against Biden, even though Biden was total anti-corruption and there was nothing going on for corruption. I mean, that whole thing. It's like the OAN network is pushing that Dr. Fauci is the enemy. You know, they're running around with all their protests, you know, against Fauci and Bill Gates and I can't. George Soros, of course, that's on the posters and everything that they're pushing. And this is stuff that QAnon. Oh my God, these that whole network is connected to Trump and Putin. It's all right. So I want to get back to when you see that stuff. We need to flood the airwaves, our airwaves, with truth, with the determination that we're going to get the facts out, that we're going to draw inspiration from those who are calmer and who are, in fact, like Dr. Fauci, you know, who really do tell the truth. um, I am also somebody who follows the polls all the time, primarily from my favorite website, electoralvote.com. Electoral-vote.com. Um, and things in terms of what the polling has been saying, right at the moment, although there are all kinds of toss-up states, probably 10, right at the moment, in terms of where things are leaning, Biden could have over 406 electoral votes. I don't think that's going to hold. Nobody does. Nobody does. I don't believe the polls. Don't believe the polls. Well, right. Is, but the reason why the polls and a site like that are important is for strategy, because so many people are in despair and upset and are afraid he's going to win, and that's what they want from us. What they also would like from us is to get complacent if we see that Biden could win. Well, we have to ignore all of that and just work on the strategy. Yes, it's possible that all these red states, red areas are in play. So we can put energy, especially from the grassroots. It use the polls as encouragement, not as, oh, they were always wrong, don't believe them, blah, 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 blah. Just use them for the purpose of strategy. Of course they can be wrong because they are always within the margin of error anyway, and most of them are hanging on the edge. So, you know, but we have a chance in places that we never had, we couldn't possibly believe we had a chance in. So let's go for it. Let's use them on the positive direction. Let's work to flood our groups that we are within with more inspiration and enthusiasm. I'm not saying, I'm not asking everybody to stop ranting and change their ways and change who they are. We are automatically we are automatically angry. Me too. I'm angry. I'm pissed. I'm really. Ah! We just need to recognize that we balance that with hope. Balance it with appreciation for those who are out there um, fighting for us. That's not that's the Democrats. That's our communities. Forgive the disinformed as much as you can and concentrate and focus on holding accountable the disinformers, those that are spreading the lies from the top, not those who have fallen for the crap. It's still going to take a long time. It took a long time in Germany to shift all those Nazi soldiers that came home that didn't die in the war, who just felt guilt for 20, 30, 40 years. And I know the children of those German soldiers. We are not at that level of fascism. And we need to be careful with our own rhetoric because that can backlash against us. We are facing fascist propaganda tactics, but not that level of fascism. And I'm not even sure that neo-fascism wants to go to that level of war and murder. They are certainly willing to allow people to die. They have a Let Them Die campaign, and those that are doing that need to be held accountable. But try not to take it out on the neighbors and family who don't see any of that and are disinformed. Forgiveness. Finally, I'm going to land with acceptance. We are where we are right at the moment. It's an uphill battle, even if we're leading, because they are desperate. They're playing the victim. They are going to lie even worse than ever. And the network they're going to come up with new stuff because it's an international network. So accept that with acceptance of the okayness that we're angry, that we're outraged, but not allowing it to fall into depression and despair. That's something that I have to fight with in my own self every day because I have a chronic illness. And so I still struggle, but at least I have the tactic going. And I think in healthy people, it actually works a lot better. So go for the healing and unity. Feel the love and spirit this week that we're going to have with John Lewis and the whole family gathering together. Let's feel that inspiration, that love, that spirit. Let's let them help us continue with determination, continue to resist, continue to hold those who are disinforming the world, and especially our friends and our neighbors, all those disinformers. Um, let's not blame the disinformers. Hold, no, don't blame the disinformed. Blame and hold accountable the disinformers. That's my message today. That's my main message today. With love, um, and thanks. I really thank you for having listened. Have a good week. Have a good 100 days.